bankruptcy, not the best one in the future, selling it or going public with it. Prior to starting the bank, I was with the bank group for 20 years, from 1980 until 2000. And in 1997, we did take that bank public in a NASDAQ listing. And God, was that great fun. It was my way of kind of feathering my own exit at the time, because I was able to take my retained retirement funds, which were denominated in our holding company stock. And when I left, I didn't have to go to the guys running the bank and say, would you redeem my stock? I don't think they were happy I was leaving. I just took that stock to the broker and sold it, so because it was publicly traded. So an exit strategy for you, if it's really big and successful, much like the guys at Groupon and Facebook are dealing with now, are we'll sell it. We'll bring it public, and I'll take my equity, and it'll become liquid. And it's been said, and I agree with this, that if you have a net worth that's not a liquid net worth, it's probably not a real net worth. It's a nice theory. It looks good on paper, but if you can't turn it into cash, it's not as much fun as if you can. So keep that in mind. What's missing in the business plans I've seen is focusing on the exit. How are we going to get out of this? If you talk me into coming into it with you, how are we going to get out of it? Execution. Why can you execute better than other folks can, especially if it's not the first time the world has seen your concept, if it's not the first restaurant or bank or whatever it is that you would like to do, distributorship. Focusing on a market because you're young and talented, you could think about a much larger scale and scope of potential clients, especially because now 12 years later, 15, 20 years later, we really have e-commerce, and it really is becoming a larger part of retail and secure business transactions. But if it's a business that's going to have still a three-dimensional aspect to it, and you're going to integrate an internet component, make sure that's well articulated as well, because it tells us that you're using all the tools available to you to make sure your business succeeds. One of the things that was compelling for Professor Meyer when he invested in our little deal was the disclosures up front that not only had I had my founding partners had relevant experience in our industry, banking. I had my life savings invested in it. I had put a board of directors around me, which was kind of the adult supervision that you kind of look for when you're going to look at a new venture. And those board members disclosed in that document how much they were already committed and how much they'd already put in. That's pretty compelling. It's like, wow, this guy, remember it took me 28 years to get out of the graduate school. Not the brightest guy in the world, but certainly a guy who's had some experience in his industry. He's got people who believe in him. They put their money in ahead of the money they're asking me to put in. And I think I get this. I think there's an exit strategy. I think that the case they've made to build a bank at that site, all the research we did about why it should work, and it really worked. That actually led to a happy conclusion. So that's probably why I'm sitting here, is because Mike Welch thought, well, that was pretty cool. You don't hear of that very often, where academic integrates fully with the reality of the so-called real world. But that's why I keep coming back to this, because I really want it to continue. I really want you folks to use this academic opportunity and think about the feasibility and the sustainability, I think, and use this time, if you really have ever had any kind of entrepreneurial aspect to your current thoughts or your future thoughts, let those run wild. Let's see what you can do with this. If again, I'm fine if somebody enters this and says, geez, I'd love to get to $5,000. It's an academic exercise. Probably can't really happen in the real world. That's fine. But in recent years, as you've seen, that as Hero said earlier, some of these things have really been used. The time you're spending doing this has really been useful and helped solidify and clarify the thoughts and planning which are necessary to get a business launched, successful, profitable, and I've always thought, when I've looked around with my successful investors, we talk about, do you want to do good in the world? I started in the business world to help people, ... profitable. So if I want to go out in the world and help people and not do something profitable, I join a not-for-profit thing, a church or something. But there's a great deal of satisfaction in your career if you figure out that your business that you're involved in is helping people, and you're making a lot of money doing it. It's a wonderful thing. It's incredible how generous you can be and how charitable and how much money you can give away if you have a lot more than you need to live on. So I worked for a guy who bought our bank, and unfortunately, because of probably not a well-thought-out, well-diversified investment, ended up losing a $19 billion holding company. His personal net worth, which is well disclosed in local financials, was about $2 billion at the high in 2007 when they bought our bank. One guy, $2,000 million of book value, which is verifiable because of public records, lost it all. But he was incredibly charitable during his time of earning $260 million a year after tax. One guy, all of his discretionary income, he put a lot of it back into the banking business, but anonymously and quietly, enormously generous. So there's nothing that says that you have to choose helping people or making a lot of money. It works just fine together. I think that's pretty much the non-textbook aspects that you could think about. And I really do hope that you'll think about this time to focus on a business which may or may not have exist at this point. If it's an old business and you're going to do it better than anyone else, great. We've seen them for car washes. We've seen them for nursing homes. Another kind of a pet care kind of thing. So I encourage all of them, especially if the point of your exercise is that you're going to try and make a go of it and bring it to life. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech tonight. I think we have like 10 minutes to just kind of have like Q&A session. So if you have like any questions with him, just please feel free to just ask any questions.
I'm going to leave my contact information too. So
yeah.
I think oftentimes people would just like to lob in an email or something afterwards. So maybe you guys can put that up on the screen afterwards if you like. So.
Thanks.
What I'm doing now is after we sold the bank, I stayed with the new guys until they lost their bank in October of '09. So afterwards, I stayed with the acquiring entity, which was U.S. Bank, until March of this past year. Then I said, well, geez, I was getting calls from the old investors saying, should we start a new bank? I said, hell no. What? Are you nuts? Why would we take perfectly good 2010 dollars worth more than they were in '07 and do something crazy like that? What we are doing is we put together a bank holding company or assembling of capital. Its purpose is to invest in really banks that were pretty well run in the past, but because of the distress in the sector, we can buy these at as little as 25 cents on the book value. And the question becomes, what's the real book value? But at 25 cents on the dollar, and then ride them through to better times. We think this is a really good way of spending our time and our attention. We've gotten the backing of an investment banking firm called Sandler O'Neill, which has a New York presence. They're specialized in financials, but they've entrusted us, three founders, with going forth in front of their private equity sources up to $200 million of this is equity now. So if we bring the right opportunities, and that's what we spend our days doing, is evaluating banks, we're utterly confident we can say, okay, it's $1 billion bank. We need about $100 million to recapitalize it. We've earned the opportunity to do that through our career, through our past track records and so forth. And again, my part of this, own a little bit of a lot. Just get that little sliver. That ought to be just fine. So if you ever have the pleasure of becoming a CEO of something, you've heard this before about managing up and managing down. When you walk into a board meeting, and you're going to conduct a board meeting with very powerful, smart, wealthy people,